What's going down, everyone? Brother, sister, twister, welcome to Radio Productivista. This is my Deep Flow Chit Chat feature. Deep is a deep flow, this goes deeper. Of course that's a lie, cause it's not true. For rhyming's sake, I'm teasing you. So what would be closer to the truth? Deep flow is sexy, this feature is too. This is the weekly chit-chat column, where I share the struggles with my problems, a documented journey I might call fate. I talk about stuff that I create. Sometimes I'm rather dabbling. Some of the stuff's really happening. Would love to learn what your thing is. Meet you on some of the evenings. I want to create very soon. In London, Ibiza, on the moon. Let's get this started, everyone. I'm lazy again on the microphone.
You know what to do. Where do we go from here? Don't let it rule you.
This is the premiere, and I could talk a lot about the different aspects of the evolution that have led to this first weekly feature. But there's already a lot of ground I'm covering in the feature itself. I try therefore to focus on the major developments in this intro. First, I created a show every weekday from Monday till Friday, and that's what I've been wanting to do for an eternity. This was possible only because my crates, the folders that contain my music, are stuffed with tracks and beats I have been collecting, filtering and preparing for years now. I can grab anything because I got rid of the music that didn't resonate with me, just as I'm getting rid of everything I'm not resonating with. I also made peace with the all-over-the-place approach with regard to genres. That was the vibe I was going for, but had given up when focusing on genre-based shows for quite a while. That had mostly happened because I had been so heavily in love with the show titles like Urbanized, Diminished and Skunking. But that one got solved. If you listen to my shows last week, you will understand that. Rather unrelated problems having sex is a recurring theme there and this week. This feature was also possible because I have advanced quite a bit with regard to my content challenge, which leads us to the second development. It just happened. I had prepared a lot of text for the Monday's show when I finally surrendered to the fact I was not going to be able to stuff that much content into each show and still have a life. I had been clinging to a massively inflated image of possible performance. I have been unable to live up to that ideal all my life, but that did not keep me from trying to achieve like a hero. Which of course was as childish as the stubbornness I radiated. This week I started to make order in the house and get rid of everything overwhelming that I had control over. So now there are less words in the shows and there's a lot more room for the music, and that is what I always wanted. 2 birds with 1 stone I kill. What a blessing. Third and last, this is a technical one. I started to record the shows with my digital audio workstation, which happens to be Bitwig. That's a Berlin company out of Germany. A great fit because I use a Linux machine as my streaming device, and there's a Linux version of Bitwig that works exactly like the one I have on my Windows laptop. This allows me to have a much tighter grip on post-production, so I was able to improve the ducking. That is, when the music is ducking away while I'm talking, like it is right now. I was able to have more ways to work on the tracks that contained the talking and the music. And I was able to create a little song, yes, on the fly, that you already heard parts of, from what had been a poem before. No, you haven't. No, it's going to come pretty soon. Yes, it will. There's of course still a lot to do. I want to optimize the overall process, mostly with regard to recording and post-processing, but also with overall organization. I will also have a look at my backing tracks again and make sure I choose the ones that correspond with the overall vibe I'm aiming for, and then I have to think a lot about England, the English-speaking community, and my strategy with regard to that. And probably that will be the feature for next week. So there you have it. The first Deep Flow Chit Chat feature. And hey, why not start with a little reggae vibe? Yes, I, Rastafari, and so on. The week starts, it's time to talk about the weather. In rhymes, of course, and why not? In a song. So this is this week's Deep Flow Show weather song. The first two verses, me lazy as always, on the microphone. The weather. I ask myself whether it would be better if I talked about last week's pleasures. Yeah, yesterday it was pretty warm. Of course I left my jacket at home. Coming home later, my youngest was gone. There's nothing in this world that I could have done. I told myself, you want to be strong. Relax, lazy, you returned her to her mom. Again in this place, all on my own. At first everything felt so wrong. I then felt relief that I brought her back, 'cause now I can finally get back to work. I'm pretty sure that you can relate. Lately, I have a lot on my plate. Whatever the ever-changing weather is, all I want to do is simply dance beneath. Whatever the ever-changing weather is, all I want to do is simply flow with it. Whatever the ever-changing weather is, all I want to do is simply dance beneath. Whatever the ever-changing weather is, all I want to do is simply flow with it. Was a happy daddy in hell and in heaven. That's what happens when you're together 24/7. I was with that stubborn princess all week, and now I can set my ambition free. When you completely embrace and experience the whining, the fighting, hence the suffering ends. So now that my daughter is gone, I'm here and I'm not on this microphone. 'Cause that's the funny thing with determination, and why doing our thing is so liberating. Head, shoulders, knees and toes. When you follow your truth, your ego dissolves. What you end up with is a pretty sweet flow. There's something about deep flow I also let go. Happily sorry, I do announce this. Something happened to my deep flow lounges. So whatever the ever-changing weather is, all I want to do is simply dance beneath. Whatever the ever-changing weather is, all I want to do is simply flow with it. Whatever the ever-changing weather is, all I want to do is simply dance beneath. Whatever the ever-changing weather is, all I want to do is simply flow with it. Weather report yesterday, I was talking about being present in the presence of children when children are around. I was talking about last week where I was spending time with my youngest 24/7. She had holidays and yes, she was sick too, which turned 24/7 into more of a reality than you might have thought. In that poem, I proposed the idea of committing wholeheartedly to what we are doing. That commitment allows us to embrace all aspects of an experience. And this determined way of going about our days can trigger a mode in our organism that I call deep flow or productivity bliss. At the end of my weather report, I exploited the notion of deep flow to switch topics. I did so with a reference to my friend and now coach, Stephen Cardona. And yes, I might seem a bit obsessed with him at the moment. But honestly, I care a lot less about what I might seem like these days than before, and this is why. First, I'm currently enjoying the audiobook The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. Listening to it, I feel a deep urge to apply his lessons to both the things I care about and, well, the rest. Second, I'm grateful that I can tap into abundance on many levels. This abundance includes encounters where I can discuss the challenges I'm struggling with. Those happen, the encounters, with different people these days. The special thing about my coaching sessions with Stephen, though, coming up with solutions to my challenges, is the exclusive focus of those encounters. Third, Stephen really is a sensitive, subtle, and effective colleague. He shares perspectives that are very inspiring to me, and that lets me solve problems a lot faster than ever before. In our first session, we talked about my struggle with the deep flow lounges. Stephen came up with the idea that my deep flow lounges might long for a connection with the strictly dance sessions. At first, I laughed at his idea, internally of course, while nodding on the outside and pretending I was honestly considering his proposition. Yeah. I was absolutely convinced of my approach. The different formats needed to say separated, yes, English. I held on to that conviction until Friday last week. I was streaming the second show of the Deep Flow Lounges following a new concept I had come up with. But the new concept proved to be exactly and only that. Yeah, a concept. It didn't fly. It didn't work, and it hurt my ego. That's when it dawned on me that Stephen had been right with his intuition all along. Fuck him, yeah. I felt like leaving the idea and concept of separated deep flow lounges behind. And after some further reflection, that didn't even hurt. Rather, the contrary. colleague, coach and friend, thought that my deep flow lounges urged for a deeper connection with my strictly dance events. First I thought he was wrong. Later I learned that he was right, and that created a severe narcissistic crisis. Yes. What's more, the connection the lounges urged for was even deeper than what Stephen probably anticipated. The Deep Flow lounges wanted to become one with the Strictly Dance events. They felt like getting completely absorbed by the latter, and that is exactly what happened. It felt weird and wrong at first. Then I went into a phase of reflection, inquiring and experimenting, and then I liberated myself from a diversity of creative problems by the simple act of letting the Deep Flow lounges leave my home and live with our close relatives on the next block. I now understand that my beloved Deep Flow lounges are meant to be one flavor of my Strictly Dance lounges. They did not want to stay on their own as a separate format, and they did not want to stay with me. Good thing is, I had come up with the name of the flavor a long time ago, Diminished. And that has become the title of the jazzy, weird and electro version of my dance streams now. And if you have a thing for newborns, you can find the first Diminished show at mix.lazy.mo. Furthermore, the musically rich tracks that I wanted to keep for the Deep Flow lounges are meant to enrich and deepen the experience of these all over the place radio shows. The problems I had with creating content had a fruitful collision with my Deep Flow lounge issue. That collision was pretty similar to the one I described last week for the content realm. Two problems got together and created a solution that has a strong and hopefully long-lasting impact on my life, my work, and my overall being. Who would have thought? Where there was a lot of words during the radio shows before, I now return to my initial concept and idea that, in parts, I derived from the radio shows of French radio station FIP. Lots of very beautiful and inspiring tracks from diverse genres, and a sexy female French voice that would take up very little time and space every once in a while to share some background information about an artist or an event coming up. Then of course I don't speak French in these shows. I'm not a woman and I still talk a lot. But I try to sound as sexy as possible with my lips very close to the mic nonetheless. Last, why not add deep and minimal house tunes to these radio shows? I've already started to arrange those tracks in a way that would allow me to combine them with non-housey tracks without mixing, didn't I? That's why I started to dig into the corresponding virtual crates when preparing yesterday's show, and I did the same thing half an hour ago. Yeah, I did. What are the overall consequences of the before described developments and decisions? I have one show less to prepare and one format less to invent and develop. I enjoy getting rid of my little darlings so much that I feel I finally found my vocation. I'm a serial killer. Yeah, killing is so joyful. It's so nice and liberating to get rid of these little darlings. Of course, there's a lot less content I have to prepare for the shows now. I can focus more on each piece and still find the time to have a chat with friends and family. Of course, I would not want to exaggerate it with those chats, as George Burns has put it once. Happiness is having a large, loving, caring, close-knit family in another city. Then there is another positive side effect of those rather unrelated problems, having sex and giving birth to interesting solutions. I can add an additional musical flavor to my radio shows with two effects. That flavor adds spice to the sauce and creates a more fulfilling experience. It also creates a bond and connection between the radio shows and the strictly dance events. As a side note, maybe it's a good thing with regard to the productive unfolding of our creative potential if we invite unrelated problems and challenges to spend the night together. What do you think? Let's conclude for today. It's easy to be stubborn. It is easy to be self-inflated. It is easy to cling to ideas and concepts even if they create considerable friction with everything else. As said before, sometimes it's good and important to hold on to stuff, and that is true even in the face of adversity. Even more so when sticking to something that feels real and true helps us with staying in a deep flow. At the same time, we want to keep a grain of openness and agility in everything we do, no matter how committed we are. When it comes to productivity bliss, it is key to cultivate a mode of constant research. The goal of that research: find easier, smoother, and more realistic ways of achieving what we want to achieve. Because, after all, the thing we want to achieve most in our lives might be experiencing productivity bliss and being in that deep flow, and we might not even have considered that yet. There's a quote that some attribute to Henry Ford. Many people are busy trying to find better ways of doing things that should not have to be done at all. There's no progress in merely finding a better way to do a useless thing. This quote hits me right into the face, and that hurts. It puzzles me when I think about all the things I tried, did, and continuously optimized without making sure the thing I was dabbling with was really important to me. I was so self-indulged at times and so much in love with my little idea darlings. I was overprotective too. I did share my ideas, of course I did, but that was about it. I was very fond of my little cuties most of the time, but I rarely allowed them to leave the house. I was so afraid they could die a terrible death once I'd give it a go and test them in real-life encounters. Or rather, I was afraid I was going to die a terrible death if my ideas and concepts wouldn't have had the impact I had associated with them. I was over-identified with my stories, my goals and concepts. And that's why I kept myself occupied with thinking and conceptualizing in my little mental laboratory most of the time. I constantly wandered through a maze of thoughts, and most of the time I did so in circles, more or less. My ideas used to be my home. My stories had been my haven. My ambition helped me create an identity and a trajectory for my life. But that identity was so bloated and my ambition was so over the top that I wasn't able to achieve much at all. I felt completely overwhelmed and didn't even realize it. Lately, things have changed a lot, though. So things have changed a lot lately, though. Doing, testing and experimenting have become my main focus. Working the problems and exploiting them has become a sport of sorts. I put ideas and concepts constantly to the test by executing them in ways that would allow me to learn and understand better. The first test I came to appreciate is that of resonance. Questions I work with: how does this feel? How does that resonate on a deeper level? I constantly make sure I'm investing my time, my energy and other resources into stuff that stands the test of interaction with my organism. Only when I feel a sustainable resonance, I take the next step. I interact with people and things. The question here: what do I experience when I confront my ideas and concepts with people and things? The information I gather, I feed back into the process of feeling, ideation and experimenting. And this is exactly what happened with my deep flow lounges. A lot of stuff felt off. The resonance was unstable. I had a hard time to understand what those lounges were about. With the input of Stephen and further processing, I got to the point where it became very easy to let go of the initial idea and the concept that had been vague most of the time. With regard to the quote by Henry Ford, I'm not sure if usefulness is the most important reason to commit for me. In my world, the question is rather if something makes sense, if something resonates. The question I ask is, does it resonate? And I might not even yet know where the endeavor at hand would lead. If it feels important, if it resonates, I commit to further exploration and experimenting. If not, I kill it. Yeah. But rest assured, I learned to kill them effectively. They die a fast and painless death. And there's a crazy thing I found out. Don't tell anyone, but sometimes they come back. Yeah, they do. In my teens, there was no Walking Dead TV show yet. But there were zombie movies already. One of them was called Sometimes They Come Back. That is not only true for the dead returning, it isn't only true for us zombies, neglecting our calling, living a mediocre life, a half-life though. Reconnecting with our heartfelt ambition every once in a while only. That is also true for some of the little darlings we kill. It is also true for the little darlings that leave our house to explore the world and get away from us. I was sitting in my armchair while listening to an amazing track by Saint-Germain, and the deep flow thingy knocked on the door. It felt sorry, yeah, and I felt sorry too. It was very intense and emotional and dramatic. We tried to understand what had happened. We explored ways and grounds on which to move on, maybe together. That's when another small little problem came down the stairs. I'm not sure, but her eyes were pretty red and the smile gave away that the pot she must have smoked was rather sweet. She was babbling about this and that until she zoned in on the title of this radio show, like the name was too complicated and unsexy and everything. I sensed an eye contact, deep flow, and a stoned problem made. Then a stoned one came up with an idea she felt like sharing, yes. And I'm very much convinced both of them had exchanged and prepared beforehand. Say, why don't you call your radio shows deep flow shows? That rhymes, she said, flow and show. And that's what the shows are about, aren't they? That really took me by surprise. I didn't know what to say other than, would you mind going upstairs and fetch some of that sweet pot you have for all of us? Would you? Could you? Talked about being present in the presence of children, how that allows for stronger commitment in our projects when we return to those, and how ideas and convictions ask to be challenged all the time. We talked about related and unrelated problems having sex and how with regard to our evolution it might be interesting to arrange stayovers rather for the unrelated problems than for the related ones. Talked about how that could help with giving birth to solutions that really make a difference. We talked about serial killing as a vocation, we talked about the dead returning, and we talked about problems being so high and intoxicated they would be able to see the very obvious where we were blind. With all of that being said, it's time to conclude this week of Deep Flow shows with a little poem. Or rather, with the last verse of this week's Deep Flow show's weather song. And yeah, it's still me, Lazy, on the microphone. What has the weather to do with all of this? Maybe that stability not its nature is. Our ideas and perspectives are like the weather. They're meant to evolve, that is change for the better. And sometimes our ideas are a bit like the clouds. There's depth and beauty when they move around. Our problems, they love to relax in the shadow, spending time together on a bee-buzzing meadow. No witnesses present, ooh, I say why they interact in some kind of mystical way. Later they give birth to pretty solutions, their contribution to our human evolution. And while we might hope for sunshine tomorrow, what we crave is to bathe in a delicious deep flow. We're blind, what we love is life's constant change. We're obsessed with sunshine, say, isn't that strange? So whatever the ever-changing weather is, all I want to do is simply dance beneath. So whatever the ever-changing weather is, all I want to do is simply flow with it. So whatever the ever-changing weather is, all I want to do is simply dance beneath. So whatever the ever-changing weather is, all I want to do is simply flow with it.